Hello, my name is Jameel Raymond. Welcome to the Binge Thinker episode 18. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here as always. In today's episode, in light of what's going on politically within Australia, I thought I would do a bit of a debrief and an analysis of the Australian election just for shits and gigs. I'll talk about a couple of other things if time permits as well. But as someone that is actually political, if you listened to my pod last week, I said that I wasn't really. I am quite political. I just could not be fucked dealing with that at the time because, again, it's just a whole bunch of bullshit, the lead up, the way that it is poorly executed upon by the media, not really aligning to the interests of the people. It's always a bit of hubbub, the mainstream media and traditional media having its absolute feeding frenzy on the amygdala-based conversations it has around fear and wages and all of just the hoopla. We're all tired of it. We just want to get to the fucking point. We just want to get to the answer. Who won? Who's taking care of things? Are they actually going to pull through on this fucking shit that they're talking and campaigning about? Because most of these promises don't mean fucking shit to us. They really don't. All of the campaigning, all of these, figures that they throw at us about we're spending X billion on this and 7 billion on that, it goes through most people's heads and just one in one ear, out the other. So let's actually look at what the numbers say about the current state of our political climate and have a little bit of fun on the way, right? Provide a bit of levity. I'm supposed to be a comedian. Let's talk a little bit of shit. Let's think about what's happening next, all right? That's me sipping on my coffee. I'm caffeinated. I'm on my second long black of the day, as is the want around this time of day for me. So I could talk out of my ass, which is usually what happens. Usually when I've had my coffee, I'm shitting out of my ass pretty quickly after that. So there might be a break in this pod. Who knows? Anyway, it's good to know. Let's start off with the fresh facts. Albo has won. Labor Party has won, and there is a collective sigh of relief across the country for sure, I think, around that. The brash incompetence and just blatant, just disregard for any practicality of the Australian people in the Liberal Party at the moment. And you can't not say anything except lost touch. Right? The Liberals particularly have lost their moderate base to the independents because there is no rational centre in the two-party preferred system. Labor has sort of played a straight bat throughout this, just sort of letting the Liberals just sort of topple over their own way. Like I said last week, Albo's gone into full daddy mode. He's got his, he's lost a few kegs. He's dressing sharp. He's looking like the responsible statesman that needs to take this country by the fucking horns and pull it up a notch based on all the bullshit that we've dealt with within our region, geopolitically, globally, over the last 3+ years. It's been a real tailwind. Is tailwind? No, a headwind. Tailspin. There we go. It's a tailspin. Australia's political optics over the last probably 5 years, ever since old mate Malcolm got turfed. God. So does that make ScoMo technically a one-term prime minister? Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Because when she got dropped in by Malcolm as basically a human shield against Dutton becoming prime minister. Thank fuck, though. Dutton is literal Lord Voldemort and probably going to be the head of the opposition for the next few years if there's really no other relative candidate, because old Frydenberg, also, just an increasingly moldy potato, has been turfed out in a very safe, very toffee-nosed seat here in Victoria's East. I forget the term. Who gives a fuck of what the actual seat is? No one cares. You hear all these weird names for seats in Parliament You're like, what the fuck? Yeah, Swan and Burke. And so let's look at some of these really just dumb fucking terms for electorates, shall we? I mean, they're not too bad, I guess. Eden Monaro, that's definitely in New South Wales. Bit of a Nara there. They're all just like old white people names, aren't they? Like Macquarie and Hume and Cook and Bennelong's sort of Aboriginal, I suppose. Deacon. It's just old white money that have just hopefully influenced the country for the better. But it really means fucking nothing to nobody until election time. You're just like, all right, where the fuck do I show up? Where do I poll? Where's my sausage? I don't mind paying for the sausage. Just have the sausage on hand. That's really the crux of it. I think I waited like 90 plus minutes in line to vote. I always vote Greens. I voted Greens my entire life because I know that the preferentials will go to Labor anyway. You know what? This may be my last year or last election voting Greens. Not to say that they've done anything wrong. The reason why I've always voted Greens is because I do align with a significant amount of their policies, particularly in the major party spectrum. But having a look through some of these more minor parties, you're like, well, you know what? Why not give them a go? Because let's look at some of the metrics here. So I'm doing this pod on the Sunday 22nd, so not everything has settled in, right? We know that there's a good chance that Labor will get at least minority government, potentially majority government. The Greens have come third together in all total votes. People are saying based on forecasts and by the way, let's talk about how much of a singular entity in politics Anthony Green is, because this guy seems to just crack his fingers and just be popped out every time the election come by. He's like Michael Bublé at Christmas. You know what I mean? He just sort of sits in the background and then every 4 years is like, this is my time to shine, baby. Everyone listen to me. And then they just probably put him back in a coffin and put him in a warehouse at the ABC studio somewhere. But yes, the Greens, they're annoying. The Greens are annoying. I think they're annoying to me at the moment just because they are the representation of the left in Australian politics. But I think I might have said this last week, but very similar to the shit fight we've seen politically in the media. They have become victim to identity politics within Australia. Talking about, just extremist statements that do not necessarily, sure, they might align with the angry and the disenfranchised youth that are screaming out for some relative policies and, more well thought out policies around things that matter to us, such as, rising costs of living, the environment, climate change, those sorts of things. But they are just very much a parrot of the left wing of the American Democratic Party in the way that they mirror their messaging and those policies. Like just a lot of mothering statements like, yeah, we're going to fucking tax the billionaires. Yeah, okay. Yes, you should. Billionaires should probably pay a little bit more. An estate tax is going to be significant transfer of wealth over the next 10 to 15 years as the billionaires and the wealthy few that have accumulated wealth over the last 20 plus years thanks to neoliberalism, capitalism, transfer these massive amounts of wealth to the next generations into other funds and all that other bullshit. Sure. But the practicalities of getting that through to the middle class, to, the brunt and the majority of the working class and the influence of having the bulk of the influencing power getting more into the middle, it doesn't help that narrative. You've got to get away from the hippie mentality, I think, when it comes for the Greens to evolve into a significant, at least if not a cross-bench entity, but to win a few more seats. Like, don't get me wrong, they've won 2 more seats this this election cycle. From what this says here, they've gone from 1 to 3 in the lower house, which is fantastic. But only a net increase of 1.6% so far. So approximately 12% of the votes counted so far. So if we just were to extrapolate that, maybe if they had got to 15% at the end of the day, 15% of the total vote. Now, that just goes to show the bubble, the left bubble, I think. You know, almost all of that 15% of the vote would probably be in the CBD and the metro of the major cities in Melbourne, right? And we're probably talking just more Melbourne and Sydney, a little bit of Brisbane. I think they want 2 seats in Brisbane. But it just goes to show that for all of the smiles and the handshakes and the kumbayas of the political spectrum and all the people that are bleeding heart lefties that I'm surrounded by, it really just goes to show that there's a bit of a reality check that needs to happen here when it comes to the practicalities of the middle class. Because yes, they absolutely want to be upwardly mobile. And yes, they will probably tend to agree with the ideals that the Greens are trying to put forward. But the impracticality of the messaging of saying, we're going to do this and we're going to make the billionaires pay for it, is almost really the same thing as what Trump was doing with saying, hey, we're going to build this fucking wall and make the Mexicans pay for it, right? We're going to get this something for close to nothing. We're just going to take it from somebody else and we're going to benefit from it. And that doesn't really, that is just, again, it's just the inverse of what the extremist does. I've always said the 2 extremes end up coming full circle. It's just the same shit with a different tinge to the same message. So, I mean, yes, the Greens could be a powerhouse if they just toned it down a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah, we all want sustainable energy. Sure. Yes, we want Medicare for all. Yeah. But why aren't you breaking into this middle class? Why aren't you breaking into, that more centrist perspective? Be a little bit more reasonable in the way that you approach this. Maybe you need to have a little bit more structure to the way that you shape your policies and explain that to the common man. Yeah, that's the interesting thing, is that for all the noise of the left and all the hubbub that comes around with being perceived as a Green supporter, the Greens need to put the weapons down, right? Put the kombucha down for a fucking second. Pick up a 4X Gold. Pick up a VB for a second. Maybe get one of those nice non-alcoholic beers that I keep seeing around. I mean, the non-alcoholic beer, that's the opposite of the Canadian Dry. You know how the Canadian club guys had a campaign saying over beer? The non-alcoholic beer is the opposite of that. That is going, hey, I fucking love the taste of beer and I don't even care if it gets me drunk. That's almost the purest form of beer lover, more than any of these IPA motherfuckers or anyone that's got, an XPA or something A, right? So many pales, so many ales. When did we go from beer to ale so quickly? Interesting. Anyway, another thought for you. Yes, the Greens are annoying, even though I'll vote for them. And I probably always will in some way or form. But fuck, they're pissing me off at the moment, hey? All right. So the Liberals, they lost 20 seats so far and absolutely being turfed out of the, particularly the more central areas of the capital cities. They're losing their moderate base. And I wonder if it's based on economic policy or is it based more on, domestic policy? Like, nobody gives a fuck about the refugees and stopping boats anymore. Nobody's seen a fucking boat in a couple of years. I mean, they're all stuck in Shanghai at the moment because of the lockdowns over there. And Sri Lanka's fucked at the moment. They're in so much turmoil that they can't even fucking send anyone over by boat. Same with Indonesia. They got ravaged by COVID. So it seems like everyone's too busy to be sending boats over. They're all just too busy dealing with the shit in their own backyards. But national security is always a scare tactic of the Liberal Party. Everyone's too sad about Ukraine to care about the boats that are coming in, if any at all. And we sure don't fucking hear about them anymore anyway. So that policy around that's probably dissipated by now. And then economically, they can't talk about being the superior economic leaders anymore. The bungles, the very public bungles of Australian tax dollars with the car park rorts and fucking Jerry Harvey and JobKeeper, just burning money with the submarine shit. Like, it's very interesting to see how the Liberals will reframe their message post-election, because this will fuck them up for some years to come. The fact that they've lost 20 seats and all of those seats did not go necessarily to the Labor Party, they went to independents and the Greens technically, that is quite a significant drop in the moderate base of the Liberal Party. So what does that mean to retain the ye old faithful of the Liberal Party, of the more conservatives? Because there are more conservative options out there nowadays. I mean, if you have a look at the other parties, the other more minor parties that would be considered conservative. So I'm looking at the ABC News election summary here when I talk about this stuff. If you look at One Nation, United Australia, the Nationals. Now, the Nationals, I think, are just ideologically conservative. Not that I know much about them, but I just imagine that because they're all just, country-based. I just imagine that they're like Bob Katter, but less kooky. But, no, let's talk about Bob in a sec. I love Bob Katter. He is the Yosemite Sam of the North. Let him have North Queensland. Just keep him around for the fucking lols, man. Like, what damage can he do up there? Let him have basically from Cairns up. Let him just have all of it. Just let him secede. And I want to see what he does. It would be like a fucking theme park, Katter country, if he had his way. It'd be so good. But you know what? Probably one of the best agricultural areas of Australia. The guy loves his irrigation, loves a good pipe, loves a bit of fairness to his locals. And honestly, the Batuta Advocate articles about Bob are some of the best fucking bits of Australian satire that I've ever seen. Fuck, I love them. The Batuta. I love this joke so much. I love the Batuta when they have something called the Deniliquin Dictionary, which is like it's a fan page of all the language and the turn of phrase that the Batuta guys use in their articles. And I fucking love it. Like things like someone in the Batuta referred to the Poke machine as the plumber's PlayStation. Fucking great. When I heard the Bricky's laptop as well, fuck, that's good shit, man. Oh, that's so funny. And then on a Katter article they did this week, they called some guy from Finland a clogwog. A fucking clogwog. That is so good, man. Oh, fuck. Just some weird Northern European shit. And just that great combination of the general just degradation of an entire people down, the discrimination of an entire peoples down to just a wog, and then throwing in something that's random to the culture that's sort of relevant to it. So good. It's like when they call Arabs the San N-words. I'm definitely not saying the N-word on this podcast, all right? I learned from Rogan's mistake. Fuck that. But, so, yeah, with the Liberals, are they going to double down? Because if you want to go full right-wing kook, you've got plenty of other options here in Australia when it comes to, far-right kookery. You've got fucking Pauline with One Nation, whatever the fuck she's doing. She gained almost 2% of her vote. She got 5% of the total vote so far. So technically One Nation is, according to this, the 6th biggest political party in the country. Fuck me. 5% of the vote. That is 1 in 20 people are going, you know what? The old Ranger's got a fucking point. And the United Australia Party, big old Clive, got 4.3% of the vote so far. And how many of those, how would you describe that? That so far, that's 470,000 votes for Clive, voting one. So let's break down the average Clive voter, or what they would look like, or probably think. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that a lot of his voters are tired of the two-party bullshit and, just having two turds in different colours fight for power here in Australia. Sure. Okay. Maybe there are people, there is genuine frustration about the lack of, touch with the common Australian. They're too busy smelling their own farts and fighting over their own identity politics to be actually involved in the real issues and doing anything practical about that. Sure, absolutely. That's why we'll talk about the rise of the independents and the teals. That's a term I had to learn this week in researching this podcast. So yes, we're seeing an overall frustration of the traditional ways of doing things. We're seeing a heavily fragmented society in its perspective and actually using its choice for good. Now, we've talked about in this podcast that the narrative, the mainstream narrative, is highly fragmenting as people get their sources of information from places other than mainstream media. People are leaning into their own belief systems and trying to find out things that are more aligned to what they believe in. So this optionality and this high fragmentation of the media when you source information is also going to result in perspective being changed. Just like we talked about, again, earlier podcast, the perceptive process, attention. Oh, I've forgotten my own fucking process. I completely forgotten it. Anyway, the perceptive process, information's in there. That's going to change how you perceive that information. Cognition, there you go. Attention, information, cognition, perception. That's the big four. I got to remember that. It's been a long day. Correct. So the information sources are changing. Our cognition is obviously being altered around that over time. And then, hey, our perceptions change and we're going to realign to things that suit us more. So, United Australia voters, probably anti-vax, probably watch a lot of YouTube based on the amount of ad spend that they had spent. Clive's $80 million bucket of liberal fucking pre-selection. That's pretty fucking potent, man. $80 million. I would love to know. Actually, it says here, a swing of 0.8%. Imagine spending $80 million and technically only getting, he had 4.3% of the vote to date. So he's had a 0.8 swing in his favor. So you're looking at roughly, if you were to base it on his total votes, so 0.8 over 4.3, let's call that about 15 to 20% increase in his total primary vote this election cycle. So we spent $80 million for potentially, let's just round up to, let's give him a generous 20%. It's just under 20%. 20% of 470,000 votes. Let's just say he spent $80 million to roughly get $100,000 more primary votes. What a ripoff. 80 million divided by 100,000, that's fucked. Let's do the quick maths on that. So 80 million, one more zero there, divided by 100,000. That's only like $800 per vote. That's interesting. That's not right. Hang on. Let me get this right. 80, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, divided by 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So he spent on average $800 per vote. That's quite significant, or also is it insignificant? I don't know. What is the cost per acquisition on a vote when it comes to political spending? That'd be a very interesting metric. They would have that in the back end, right? Because there's numbers everywhere, folks. We know that, maths is universal language. Everything can be broken down into metrics. You can't improve what you can't measure. So $800 per vote, if you've got a potential addressable market of, what is the potential addressable market? When I say that, how many actual votes are there in the Australian public? Let's find out. Now, I'm Googling how many votes in Australian voting in an election. Here we go, 2022. Does not say. What is the average voter turnout? So 92% of people voted, but what is the eligible voting amount? So the answer to the question, how many people voted, based on the previous federal election, the 2019 federal election, there are 16.4 million eligible voters. So let's put 400,000, and 92% of them actually voted. So let's times that by 0.92. So it was about 15,100,000 people that voted approximately, if we used the same metrics as the last election. Where the fuck was I even going with that point? Oh my goodness. Okay. So where was I going with that point? Oh yeah, I was asking myself the question, how many people voted? So there's 15 million voters. And okay, if there's 15 million voters and he spent if you were to try and win, you want to get a decent amount, right? So if you've got 15 million voters, let's call it, and you want to win two-party preferred by, well, the thing is, it's about seats. It's not about total popular vote. Two-party preferred doesn't really factor into this. I guess it all feeds up into those anyway. But looking at a 5% swing at the moment, approximately, to Labor at the end of this. So if you were to have a comfortable victory in a two-party preferred system, you would want 55% of the vote. So if you go 15 million times that by 0.55, that is 8.25 million people that voted for you in the federal election. And if you were to times that by $800, which is the same amount that Clive has technically paid for to increase his voter base, that means you would have to spend somewhere in the amount of, what the fuck, 660 million or $6.6 billion? I have fucked those numbers up. This podcast should not be about maths, people. I really should do some better figures in preparation of something like this, because I can count now numerous times how many times I've fucked up numbers in this pod. But hey, is that right? Let's do this one more time. 15 million. I need a producer who can back me up on this bullshit and try and keep up with my dumb thoughts. What the fuck? I can't count this. I can't count this fucking calculator properly. I think I keep fucking this up. 15 million times $800 per vote. That's a million. It's a billion. $12 billion. Man, I'm fucking this up hard, I reckon. Somebody back me up on these numbers. Somebody do that for me. You can't be spending $12 billion on fucking marketing to win that amount of votes over. Of course not. That logic doesn't even make sense to begin with, because people already have a predilection in their minds of who they're going to vote for, plus that includes the preferences into their two-party preferred system. So I'm really just doing some stupid math that doesn't really factor into the reality of what's going on here. And if each government had to start from scratch to get that level amount of votes, then they would have to spend $12 billion to get there, based on Clive's $800 per acquisition of vote. Yeah, okay. I finally made that all work in some stupid way. That's not how this works. This is why I'm not Anthony Green. This is why I am not going to be funding my own political party anytime soon. I mean, you can actually see how fucking challenging it is to buy your way into politics potentially from scratch. It's all about that policy. That number also does not actually factor in. That's just purely on dollar acquisition, not actual policy or anything relevant and that aligns to the people that would want to make you vote for them in the first place. So maybe that doesn't work as a concept. Maybe it does. I think it was mildly entertaining. That'll do. But poor Clive. That has actually got to be one of the most expensive cost per acquisitions in the Australian history. Because nobody's spending that much to get popular. And if he hasn't won any votes, then what does he get out of it? Is he just literally paid for another 500,000 Liberal preferences? Well, guess what? They've lost a significant amount of that anyway. He's basically put them at, he's just lowered the deficit of the lost votes. And probably that far-right weirdo supporter base that is very toxic to the Liberal Party at this point in time. Because if you've lost all the moderates to the independents in the Liberal Party, then you have to double down potentially to maintain relevance in the remaining supporter base. Because look at the people that you've allowed to do preference deals with. Because One Nation, the Nationals obviously being part of the coalition, and United Australia, the vast majority of those preferences are going to the Liberals. So they have really sold out their soul to the far right here. And then the Liberals aren't going to take it, the moderates. So they've gone, hey, we don't want people fucking with our money and we don't want to be taxed too much, which is, one of the primary fiscal policies of the Liberal Party and the Conservatives. But we actually want some practical shit to be done with our tax dollars to save the fucking planet or to have some fucking integrity with the ICAC. So that's going to be interesting. And that's also another question we were talking about before with Dutton and the leadership. Who are they going to choose as their next leader? Because Frydenberg's gone. ScoMo's going to sit in the back corner and just keep cashing his checks. So who is going to be the new face of the opposition and the new face of the Liberal Party? Now, we know that fucking Lord Voldemort has got some serious ambitions, to lead the Sith into a new republic. But I guess if he is created as leader, it will tell you the direction of the future of the Liberal Party, which is going to be interesting. I suspect if they do keep Dutton in there and he's the leader, I mean, the Nationals do have some presence predominantly in Queensland, where he is from. But there could be a very big chance that the Nationals could break up this coalition in the next 3 to 5 years. Like if there is no significant recovery by the Liberal Party, the majority of this coalition with the Nationals, what's the point in brokering those deals with the Liberals? Because we're going to see potentially in the next 3 to 5 years, from an environmental perspective, climate change affect the regional areas the most. when it comes to having all of your irrigation taken and, you know, all of the dams and all of the lack of sustainability practice in the regions that produce agriculture, I suspect. I just imagine, you know, when I think of the Nationals, though, I just think of fucking dust bowls and red sand and just a bunch of, well, I just think of fucking a bunch of Barnaby Joyces, you know, walking around in RMs, you know, doing that thing with the sand where it's like in your fingers and you just let it filter through. Some shit like that. But again, that's just me being, you know, I'm sitting in a fucking lefty bubble with 7 different kinds of house plants, just talking a bit of shit. I'm in the bubble too, right? I could probably use a little bit of rural Australia, a bit of fucking, you know, I could use an apple up the, not an apple, an opal up the arse or two. That's pretty kinky. Anyhow, what else do I want to cover off? Yeah, so United Australia's Party, what a farce. Where has Clive got his money from now? I mean, is he still just digging copper out of the ground to pay for this shit? Like, what's the Conservatives' next move after this? That's a really, really interesting question. So, okay. So in top 6, right? Labor, Liberal, Greens, Liberal National Party. Like, isn't that the same shit as the Liberals and the Nationals? Why do they have to... That's so confusing to the average person. The Liberal Party is, or the coalition is known as Liberal National Party. But then, what, the Nationals are there too? And they are there just like some weird hyper country people? I don't know. That's weird, man. Let's go through a couple of the minor parties. They're always a bit of fun. When you look at that big white sheet and you're like, you could do above the line or you can number out all these fucking weirdos with all these, you know, all these fucking kooks. And what are they trying to rise up and say? Give them the fucking time on the soapbox. Let's see what some of these weirdos are up to, huh? So let's just go down the ladder. So we said Liberal, Labor, Greens, Liberal National Party, the Independents. Oh, let's talk about the Teals, right? I had to learn about the Teals. And they are just... So why are they called Teal? I think it's because they are a band of independents that are not unionized, but are collaborating under a common goal of the Climate 200. So the Climate 200, I had to Google this as well, is basically it's a PAC. A PAC is a political action committee. So a bunch of lobbyists, so to speak, in layman's terms. So PACs are more prevalent in the US democratic system or US political system rather than democracy too. Yeah, Democratic Party. Yeah, rambling. So they're a political action party or political action committee that wants tougher change on climate change, or tougher policy on climate change. So if that goes to show it, like for example, Frydenberg lost to a Teal candidate and a couple of more traditional seats in central Queensland, or not Queensland, Brisbane, so the Brisbane CBD, actually won a couple of seats off Liberal House of Reps. I haven't really talked about the Senate, and it can't be fucked. So it just goes to show that even in the wealthy areas of Australia, there is some genuine concern about the future of this planet. It's a nice thing to consider that there is some hope in the toffee-nosed areas of this country. So to not say that there isn't so much of this narrative that the haves are just looking down on the have-nots and going, well, we'll just buy ourselves into freedom and safety once the climate change melts the oceans down or melts the ice caps into the oceans. I mean, how else are we going to maintain our premier property in Mornington Peninsula? That's a good point. I wonder if, again, let's not shit on the fact that these people want genuine change for climate change and not they just want climate change so that the sea doesn't swallow up their beachside properties. Let's lean on the perspective of hope, shall we? That people are actually intending well. So the Teals, so to speak, funded by the Climate 200, which is led by some fucking fancy dude. I think his name's Simon or something like that. That is basically saying, hey, if you align to these policies, to our political action committee around better climate change and better political action around climate control, we'll give you a bunch of money to fund your campaign. So this is a nice little, it's not necessarily the Kosh super PAC. If you don't know, was it the Kosh or the Co? Whatever. That super PAC is basically, in conspiracy terms, the Koch brothers are basically a very wealthy family. I think they're two brothers that seem to be the major political driving force behind the American Democrats. So very similar how we talk about there is these far-right conspirators that are controlling the country and controlling the planet with the New World Order. The Koch brothers or the Kosher brothers or the Koch brothers are like the left-leaning side of that. So the super left entity that could be responsible for things like veganism being pushed into the mainstream. And, all that ridiculous far left bullshit that you see being mentioned in social media and things like that. They could be responsible for that just as much as of the Skull and Bones and the Illuminati might be, on the far right. The Koch brothers are on the far left. Maybe they're trans, who knows? I don't know. But with this Climate 200, folks, according to the website, 11,200 donors from all electorates, 1/3 from regional and rural areas. So those are some good numbers to show that there is some genuine concern across the entire political spectrum about climate change. And it just goes again to show how out of touch the mainstream narrative is around that. It's very, very interesting. And this is in a way the nice story of Australia uniting, being a bit more relevant, that we're not necessarily the fucking ignorant, pig-headed morons or just ignorant people that the media puts us out to be. To go, just because Murdoch and his fucking cronies were in charge with the Liberals being there, to go, no, people don't care about climate change. Actually, fuckhead, they do. God. I'm surprised that Rupert Murdoch even is so conservative. And, for example, he would be anti-abortion. Because if he was anti-abortion, how is he going to get the stem cells from those fetuses to maintain his life? Answer me that. There's a hot take for you. I'm going to get a fucking knock on the door from someone soon. A brick through the window. I mean, a brick through the window could be anyone in Footscray, to be honest. But yes, let's circle back to all these other weirdos in the political system that have vied for your vote, the below the liners. So, the Nationals, the Liberal Democrats, I mean, is that even relevant, liberal democracy? We live in a liberal democracy, right? We are one of the most advanced democracies in the planet as far as, voting corruption, general corruption, although that remains to be seen until we see that fucking ICAC. We are in a democracy, one of the best reinforced democracies on the planet, better than America, then I would say. Maybe not as much as the Northern Europeans, but they've already had hundreds of years of bullshit and fighting to get to that point where they're just like, yes, everyone has equal rights. We just want to pay the higher taxes and everyone just wants to have some peace and quiet and just relax, right? Yes, we work less, we're happier because we've had 2,000 years of medieval wars. That was a shitty Dutch impersonation. If you can do one better, send it in, folks. I'd love to hear it. Okay, next ones are the Animal Justice Party. Yeah, that makes sense. I can get along with that. The Federation Party. What the fuck is the Federation Party? And how do they come in top 10? 43,000 votes. Let's have a quick squiz at what the Federation Party is. So they're called the AusFed Party. I'm just looking at their website. Their position statement is, this is their public statement. So their main policies are to protect life. At the Australian Federation Party, we are diametrically opposed to full-term and late-term abortions. Okay, this is going a certain way, isn't it? We find the state legislation to legalise these types of abortions reprehensible, as also the passivity of federal governments in view of public funding via Medicare. Especially when this has been coupled with the removal of the crime of child destruction from child destruction. Now that is a way to put a fucking abortion. You know what we should do? I think we need to change. If you want to have some better perspective around the term abortion, you need to change the term abortion, I think, because abortion sounds hectic. Right? There's something about, abort, like, no, fuck, turn this off, which is pretty hectic when it comes to considering abortion. So if you want the left to win this narrative around, unwanted pregnancy or something a little bit softer on the palate and the perspective, you got to change the language around abortion. Even, yes, it might be the common narrative of what it's called, but try and change the perspective on it, right? I mean, if we went from black people to person of color, let's update the term abortion to something a little bit softer. You know what I mean? My thoughts exactly. So obviously these guys are some sort of, child destruction. Fuck. That's a great one. There's something about that just hits. Also, with going back to the abortion part, I'm being very pedantic here. The abortion, that's got to change. In comedy, there's always this talk about language, about, like a hard K is funny, like fuck. The K in fuck makes it fun. Just the hard stops, the hard consonants, there is something about that does add potency to the way that is just pronounced. And there is something about the abort part in abortion that needs to be softened and changed around. Again, there is so much about that needs to be updated if the left wants to win that war. And I'm pro-choice. I'm definitely, I get what they're saying here around, late-term abortions and full-term abortions. Like, that's a bit rough, but I think the reality of that is, coming from a man's perspective, that has little to do with abortions. But I will say I'm a massive advocate of being pro-choice. I don't have that responsibility. I don't carry a baby. So I don't have any say in what a woman does with her body. Absolutely. But there would have to be something very significantly wrong with a child developmentally to even consider a late-term or a full-term abortion. Like, if for medical reasons, if that kid's gonna have a dog shit quality of life because it's disabled or in some capacity, then yeah, it's a fucking tragedy, right? But you've got to consider the quality of life for that child later on. Right? That's the problem with pro-lifers, is that they go, no, it's precious. You don't treat a life as precious after it's born. You don't give a fuck about it. You just want to win the battle of abortion and what God would do. If God was meant to allow, the precious life and the bountiful life of every individual that came into this planet, and we were like, hey, everyone on the planet is living an amazing life where they are getting everything they want and they're well looked after and there's no problems, then sure. Then it's a precious commodity, and then every life that can have that should have that opportunity. But the reality is, if you're having an abortion and or you're having a child that you cannot maintain the lifestyle of because you can barely maintain your own lifestyle, that kid is probably going to end up in some fucked shit and nobody wants to take responsibility for it. Abortion protesters are all care, no responsibility. That's what I've got to say on that. There you go. Like I said, guys, I'm left-leaning, always will be. Let's just be a little bit more practical about the way we talk about these things, huh? So back to this Federation Party. Number 2 is, again, protecting our children. Okay. So what do they say about this? The Australian Federation Party is opposed to the funding/teaching of gender fluidity theory or any other sexual theory in schools. Our schools should focus on safe and responsible relationship practices. Education is about the expansion of knowledge and developing one's ability to think critically. It is not about using our children for programming and social experimentation. I kind of tend to agree with this one, actually. Like, I don't think we should be there's enough problems defining your own identity for the entirety of your life, let alone being exposed to making individual decisions about your own identity and your gender and your sexuality before you've even reached sexual maturity. That's weird. The government won't allow us to fucking drink alcohol, over 18, but somehow they want us to define ourselves and define how we define our bodies under that age. Doesn't really make any sense, does it? Like, I don't want to get too deep into the trans stuff, but I think we're leaning a little bit too quickly into the gender fluidity things without any scientific basis or requirement, right? I'll leave that one alone for now. I'll get deep dive into that another ep. Okay, it protects women's rights, harsher criminal penalties for rape and other serious crimes that must be considered in the future. Sure. The definition of a woman is a mature adult female. That seems like it could be grey. Here we go. Christian values and the Australian Parliament. The Federation has its roots in Judeo-Christian values. This is some white people shit, all right? This is some old WASP shit. First Nations people also have the dreaming and the multicultural evolution of Australia. Now means that there is a range of religions in our country that all should enjoy the freedom of speech and expression. Okay, fair enough. Next, point 5, Christian values in Australian schools. This is some white people shit. Okay, I think we've had enough of these guys. Federation Party. They say Australian sovereignty. Okay, if you're going to become one of those fucking sovereign citizens, I think we've had enough of you guys. But those guys came in, probably about, pretty high up. But now we're getting into the weird ones, right? They beat Katter's party, Katter's Australian party. Like I said, love Bob. Get me in a Kubra. Keep posing with guns, Katter. Bobby, do your thing, mate. Do your fucking thing. The Centre Alliance, that just sounds like some nufty shit. But hey, they've got one vote. They got one seat. So they're probably like, when you think of the Centre Alliance, you just probably think of some real bland dude wearing one of those, just a button-up collared shirt with a pocket in it. I've always disliked a button-up shirt with the chest pocket. It's very high schoolish, and it's so impractical. Who is putting anything in the top pocket on a button-up shirt? It's irrelevant. I spent most of my VCE years having my front pocket, my shirt pocket ripped off by fucking douchebags as a form of bullying and taunting. Maybe that's why I'm traumatized by it, but I just don't think we need it. It just adds an unnecessary amount of bulk to the chest, and based on the average Australian male, they do not need any more bulk on their chest. Most Australian men have B cups, and that is a problem. After the Centre Alliance is the Great Australian Party. What the fuck is that? I'm not even going to bother with those ones. Victorian Socialists are after that. The Western Australian Party. Oh, that must be like dickheads that are just like, mate, we don't need the rest of the fucking country. Just Western Australia. Mark McGowan was right. Let's just fucking secede. Let's just cut the border off with South Australia and Northern Territory. It's all ours, guys. We don't need them. Fuck them all. I really hope that is something like that. They're a bunch of kooks. After that, we've got the Informed Medical Options Committee. Now, this could be some fucking weird shit. Let's have a look. Let's Google these guys. The Informed Medical Options Party, this has got to be some sort of reactive bullshit to the vaccine mandates and blah, blah. We stand for full informed consent, truth and transparency. We advocate for freedom of choice, and we aim to always represent the will of the people. Okay, nice little mothering statement. The problem I have with their name is that usually when it comes to politics, if you say you're informed in politics, you're probably just a fucking idiot. Usually those are the people who have done the 15 minutes of YouTube research, or just are parroting the beliefs of some other fuckwit that they've seen on Facebook. But let's have a look at their policies. Number one, vaccination. Okay, fair enough. Remove the no jab, no pay legislation. You know what? I agree with that. The vaccine rollout wasn't that great. It didn't save us all like it purported itself to be. We've got, 92% nationally of, 2-jab vaccines, and we've still got ridiculous rates of COVID. It was sold to us as being this protective panacea of, hey, this will solve all the problems and we can just fucking move forward as a society. Guess what? So, yeah, I am definitely someone that does not want to discriminate based on your choice to have a vaccine or not. I'm open in saying that I didn't really care to get the vaccine. I was vaccine hesitant just because of my own personal health lifestyle choices. But doesn't mean that, that's just my personal opinion. It's my body, my choice, right? But I also think if you're one of the 5G anti-vaxxers, then go fuck yourself, mate. Maybe you should go to Western Australia and, go to that joint political party, or, Go work in the Clive's coal mine. Go have fun there. Okay, talking about vaccine damage. What's their next point? Parental support. Increase parental leaves to 12 months for a parent after they stay at home with their child. Yeah, fair enough. Hey, one of their main points is remove fluoride from all Australian water supplies. I fucking knew it. I knew these guys would be weirdos. I mean, are they weirdos though? Because I filter my own tap water, and fluoride isn't actually that good for you. Fuck, I might have more in touch with these guys than I think. Maybe I'm becoming a fucking crackpot. God damn. You know what? These guys aren't too bad. What are their health policies? Defend the right for Australians to choose traditional natural therapies and include them in the public health system. Legalise medicinal cannabis in all states. Promote organic food and farming. Promote GMO-free food and labelling. Develop complementary options for psychiatric healthcare rather than psychiatric drugs alone. This particularly needs to be offered when people are placed in psychiatric facilities for extended care and assessment. Remove any ties between Australia and the World Health Organization. Fuck, these guys are actually not too bad now that I'm starting to read this shit. I mean, I don't really know about the World Health Organization, but, very similar to the UN, kind of toothless. I'm sure they're doing good things in less developed nations, but, that really means nothing to me in the way that I live. Fuck, I might be part of this IMO party, as their website purports. They're not too bad. What do they talk about? Abortions. The Queensland Termination of Pregnancy Act 2018 allows a full-term abortion. We oppose this act and seek to remove it as priority. We will seek to ban the use of human fetal organs for scientific experiments, medical testing, and inclusion in all products. We support the Children Born Alive Bill, which offers medical assistance to children who are born alive after an attempted abortion. Now, that is a fucking point. If you survive an abortion, you should be Prime Minister. If you can survive a medical abortion and come back stronger after that, if you knew that had happened to you, I wonder if you've just got a fucking agenda built into your genetic code past that failed attempt. And B, you are a fucking hard cunt. Good for you. I just imagine them coming out like that little Tarzan kid. Remember, in early 2000s, there's that little Tarzan dude? He was like a kid of 7 years old and was muscly as fuck. I reckon that's what that baby's going to come out with. He's going to come out looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Commando. Was it Commando or maybe even Predator? Where he just comes out with this 1,000-mile stare, face is covered in fucking in camouflage paint, and he is out for blood. He is out for revenge. That's what I imagine a baby that has survived an abortion that survives comes out as. And then this party with their the IMO party is gonna fucking give them assistance and funding. So fuck, this could be the start of something pretty hectic. Again, see, they go back. They've got a policy on 5G. Halt 5G rollout until independent studies and safety levels are assessed on human and animal health and the environment. Okay, guys, the 5G argument is bullshit, okay? And I'll explain this from someone that has sold 5G and is a technology professional in the telecommunications industry, okay? Why 5G is bullshit is because it is just a frequency. 5G, the fifth generation of mobile radio frequency technology, is just a higher frequency than 4G and 3G. So how mobile frequency works, very similar to radio, right? How it works is you are broadcasting information at a certain frequency spectrum. For example, 3G used to be 850 hertz or megahertz or something like that. 4G was a higher frequency. I think it was 2200. And then 5G, the fifth generation, is at a higher frequency. Okay? So it's the same fucking technology as the previous generations of mobile technology. It's just at a higher frequency. Why do they use the higher frequency? Because the higher frequency can carry more information and therefore more bandwidth in the way that it's consumed. That's it. Okay? There is no significant change to health. The higher frequency means that why there are so many more towers compared to 4G and 3G is because the higher frequency means that it is more perceptible and more subject to impediment from the physical environment. So for example, the reason why you can't get good coverage inside a shopping center is because these frequencies are very high. And what I mean by high frequency, they're very short waves. So the shorter waves cannot penetrate subtle things as much. So they cannot penetrate glass, thick glass, concrete, blah, blah, blah. Just like when you are in a big, if you're in a very solid environment, you can't really hear shit when things are soundproof because literally radio frequencies works on the speed of sound. Okay? So that just means that there is no difference to health. There is always a health risk when it comes to any electronic device through electromagnetic frequencies. And to the best of my knowledge, the difference between 4G and 5G as far as any health risks is little to none. Yes, in general, you should be removing electromagnetic frequencies from your life as much as they can. They do actually interrupt your brain waves and some of your digestive processes. But, it's when they say EMS, it's like radiation, really. There is tiny amounts of radiation that go into your body as a result. Most of that doesn't actually absorb into the body because of the way that our bodies basically deflect and absorb that. But we do take a small amount of it in. So things like even like Bluetooth, AirPods, pure Bluetooth headphones are not that great for us, particularly AirPods if they've got the individual buds, because they use more electromagnetic frequencies to communicate between each device. So ideally, you should be using corded headphones if you can and where you can instead of pure buds. Look, it's so much more convenient to use an AirPod. Don't get me wrong, I've got a pair of AirPods, but they are not that great for you. But hey, going back to the thing at heart here, IMO Party keeps flicking back and forth. And they've got some stuff on Indigenous cultures, support Indigenous cultures and the use of traditional foods and medicines in the medical system and on country. Yeah, okay, I can get on board with that. So, you know what? Not as kooky as I thought. Definitely a little bit of kook, as you would expect for a minor party that is crazy enough to push themselves against the mainstream grain of the two political party system. But kind of reasonable. Not too bad. Not too bad. They might get a 6, a 5th or 6th in the ballot paper next year. After that, we've got the Lambie Network. God bless Jackie. For all the crackpot that she was, it really is nice to have just a fucking regular person talking shit on the fringe, right? You've got Bob up north, you've got Jackie down south in Tassie, just fucking firing off, sounding off in the comment section about the reality of the country, working for the every person. And I tend to agree with her more and more as things go along. And I think that's more of an indictment, again, of the out of touch system that we have when it comes to politics. that her as just a loudmouth fishing. No, she's not a fishing ship owner. That was Pauline. Yeah, she's probably hopefully learned from Pauline and gone, hey, I'm not going to get to that level of crackpot. I just want some fucking common sense. And you go, all right, Jackie, hang around. I'll listen. After that, we've got the shooters, fishers and farmers. I just imagine it's a bunch of rednecks. I reckon that's just hosted by Rex Hunt. And then all right, we're getting into the real nufties down here. We've got the Socialist Alliance. I mean, yeah, fuck them. Fusion, don't know what that is. Aboriginal Party, okay. TNL, what's the TNL party? The TNL is the New Liberals. Interesting. Okay, so what are they all about? They want an ICAC. Good for them. Climate policy with the net zero carbon emissions. Pretty good. Full employment and job guarantee scheme. Yeah, these guys don't sound too bad. It really is hard sometimes to really break through. I'm starting to realize with some common sense and some alternative perspective when the Australian public is so just disenfranchised of the political system to our detriment, right? We do have a responsibility as the individual to be informed about the goings on in the systems that we operate in, particularly when they affect us so heavily, such as the government. The government is the biggest and slowest form of bureaucracy, but it does carry a significant amount of power. And if you do not have an understanding of that power and how to make it work for you, it will work against you, just like every other system that we have in society. When it comes to finance, when it comes to your own personal life, even understanding your own systems internally, like we've talked about here, your physical and mental systems. If you don't have control and knowledge over those things, they will have knowledge and control over you. So, that might be a nice little thing to wrap up on there as an ending point, is that there are some great... it's some great news to know that we've got some modicum of fucking balance and rationality in Australian society. We are not as divided as we think we are. It's good to know that, I'm feeling positive about the future of Australian politics for the time being. We've got some shit to clean up. We've got a pretty rough economic outlook for the next few years. Good thing is, Labor pulled us to the GFC. Maybe we have to dip a little bit more into, spending and financial stimulus to get us over the line to protect us. But we've got some significant debts to pay as a result as well. So there might be, very similar to the Greek government, some austerity measures that need to be put through for the next few years. Who knows? We'll see. Or, I was just looking at the next party down after TNL, there's the legalized cannabis party. Maybe Albo is just going to go full fucking hippie, go back to his fucking, old school uni roots and just legalize marijuana and put a heavy tax on it just like the US states did. It worked well for them. It could actually fucking not be a bad idea. I'm definitely pro legalization, but I am also pro regulation. There needs, you need, like alcohol, right? We should not be inhibited while we use heavy machinery or drive. The problem is with current legislation and current measuring of inebriation when it comes to cannabis use is that there is no way to measure inebriation. There's no way to measure how much it's actually affecting you. So we use the blood alcohol concentration when it comes to alcohol, the BAC. But currently, when it comes to drug use, it's a black and white situation there. So if you've got it in your system, you're in trouble. But you can have it in your system and it not necessarily affect you. Very similar to how if you had a BAC of 0.01 and we're below 0.05, you could still have something in your system, but it's not at a level that's going to affect you or impediment your ability to drive. So if we can develop a system that can comfortably measure that, then I would be, a lot more pro marijuana and cannabis use and decriminalizing it in Australia. There needs to be some regulation around it. We need better regulations around alcohol, I think. I think it's more of a cultural thing than a government thing. But again, the government can influence the culture by the advertising that they use. But on a positive note, alcohol use is down intergenerationally. So maybe we don't need to do, maybe it'll just take care of itself in time as well. But hey, I'm saying, Albo, mate, if you want a fresh revenue stream, pull that out of the fucking, the war on drugs is not working. If you want to keep some of the lefties happy and the Greens happy and keep them on side for the next election cycle, decriminalize cannabis, put a heavy tax on it, regulate it. People will buy it. A fuck ton of people will buy it. Use that tax to, use that as your carbon tax, right? Or, put those into initiatives that will either pay off the national debt or into initiatives that will fund some of your more crazier schemes. Like maybe you will decrease the carbon tax if you are actually using that cannabis revenue, tax revenue, into some sort of green policy. Could happen, could work. And hey, if you do, hit me up. If that's going to be part of your strategy, Albo, hit a brother up. I'll come contribute. Funnily enough, the legalized cannabis party only got 4,542 primary votes. I reckon that's probably because most of the legalized cannabis votes were donkey votes, because when they saw green paper, they were like, yeah, bro, I got some fucking green paper for you. Cue smoke weed every day thing. Why did I say that? I could just put that into the podcast myself. Anyway, who came dead last? The Australian Democrats Party, 511 votes, 511 primary votes. No shit. You are literally participating in Australian democracy. Why would you need a party that says Australian Democrats? That's so stupid. No wonder you got 511 votes. I reckon those are all donkey votes. What happened to that Natasha Scott Despoja? Wasn't she part of the Democratic Party? Fuck, that's a callback. How do I know and remember Natasha Scott Despoja? And I've completely fucked up a shitload of math during this podcast. That is so fucking weird. The brain works in insane ways. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. This has been my political rant and ramble. If you've liked what I've done, guess what? This is going to be on Fox News at some point in time. I'm just kidding. I wouldn't be on Fox. Maybe I should become like the Carlson Tucker of Australian politics and just put a rambly, ridiculous political show up on YouTube. Hey, that could actually be an ACN idea. I mean, I'm kind of working on something big in the future in that space anyway, so you never know. Anyway, guys, that's me. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Hopefully you got a little bit of fun out of this and are more informed about the future of this beautiful country we call Australia. If you want to support me, you know where to find me. Instagram at JRaymond, Aussie Comedy Network on all of your social media of choice. Please like, follow, share, subscribe, all that good shit. We are growing every day. Things are moving in a positive direction every single day. The army grows. The movement grows. It's all going well. And if you're going to want to help that along and push that momentum forward, share it with your friends, share this podcast with your friends, talk a little bit of shit about it, be an advocate. Be an advocate of what's going on here. Next week, obviously another pod. I don't know what the fuck it's going to be. Thank you very much for your time and attention, bingers. I've been Jameel Raymond. Have a great night, day, whatever you're doing. Take care of yourselves. Be good. Bye-bye.